Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining me here today. I'm live streaming on a different platform, so this is my first time being in control of my own camera, so sorry for the delay. So let's take a moment to connect with our compassionate intention for attending the class today. We are here so that we can learn how to be more present and compassionate for the benefit of all beings. So just take a moment. And now we're going to start with a few opening prayers. Right below this video is a link to the opening prayers, and we're going to chant the first one 3 times, and the next one's 1 time each. We'll say these in Tibetan, but if you are not familiar with Tibetan, you can feel free to say them in English. Organ yogi numjan sam pemage sadom bola yatsen chogi ngodrune pemajune jesura Ordu kandro mangpokor ketki jesu dabdruki jinji lobchi ashek suso guru pema seri home Organ yogi numjan sam pemage sadom bola yatsen chogi ngodrukne pemajune jesura Ordu kandro mangpokor ketki jesu dabdruki jinji lobchi ashek suso Guru Pema Seri Home Organ Yogi Numjan Sam Pemage Sadom Pola Yatsen Chogi Ngodrukne Pema June Jesura Ordu Kandro Mangpokor Ketki Jesu Daudruki Jinji Lobchi Ashek Suso Guru Pema Seri Home. And continuing on. Kunzando Sem Garab Shiri Singh Pema Kara Jipanisha Sosona Tate Kataso Katelamana Soadem Oren Chuki Yinki Podana Dusum Sange Kongi Novoit Fransen Chukum Sonton Sepe Tawe Lamanam La Soatem Sashi Pochu Chuching Meto Tram Ribab Ninjini Dekempari Sangi Zindu Mekte Puai Rokunam Dashing La Chupashok Tram Guru Ratna Mandala Putsa Mega Samudra Saparana Samaya Semchen Namki Sampadang Loi Chedrak Jitawa Chechon to Monte Pai Choki Korlo Kordu So All right, so today I want to talk about self-concern and compassion and exhaustion. I think for one thing, first thing that brought this class topic to mind is just after 6 months of quarantine, I think we're at the exact 6-month mark of being self-quarantined, at least in my household we are. And it's exhausting. I mean, it's wearying to to be dealing with this pandemic situation for so long, right? It's just exhausting that we're still here. We're still dealing with it. There's still so much anxiety. And it's just tremendously exhausting then when you're dealing with so much concern for your own well-being, so much fear for your own future, so much uncomfortability with maybe your living situation. If you're stuck indoors and that's difficult, or maybe you're living with family members who are difficult to live with, or it's just difficult not to have enough space for yourself, or difficult not to see your friends. There's so much about our experience that is difficult right now, especially if you're personally dealing with any health issues, or if you or a family member have caught coronavirus, or you just have other health concerns that make this an even more stressful time, or if this situation is impacting your economic well-being. There's so many stresses and concerns right now, and to have such an incredibly high level of anxiety and concern for such a long period of time. I mean, this is truly a traumatic period of time for anyone, really, who's dealing with this, and then especially for those who are already in positions of vulnerability, either economically or due to their health, or due to domestic violence, or anything else that could make this an especially risky time. And it's exhausting to deal with that anxiety and that stress day in and day out. It really wears you down. So I've been thinking about that, just how exhausting it is, and remembering the Buddha's teachings on compassion, and how, when we are thinking of ourselves, when we are consumed with our own self-concern and consumed with our own experience, the idea of reaching beyond ourselves and helping another, even just to consider another's experience, or to consider another being's pain, it seems unmanageable. It seems like such an incredibly large burden. Like, how can you possibly expect me to carry their burden as well as my own? My own burden is so heavy already. How can I possibly take on anyone else's? And this is a really common response. This is our habit. Since time out of mind, we have believed in the existence of self-nature being inherently real, and that we are very important. We believe that our self-nature is not only real, but very, very important, and probably more important than anyone else's self-nature, because it's ours. My self-nature is way more important than your self-nature. We very put a lot of importance on our own experiences, and our own suffering. So, but that is not, just because that is our habit, that doesn't mean that that's how we have to be or how we should be. And actually, this habit of self-concern, that is actually what is burdensome to our mind. That is what's weighing us down. We think that we don't have the time or energy to extend our hearts to embrace others. But actually, the fact that we are not expanding our hearts to embrace others, that is what is exhausting us. The fact that we are just so filled with our own concern, the heaviness of that is what weighs us down. I learned this lesson I had a specific experience when I was a teenager that drove this lesson home for me. When I was a teenager, my first boyfriend cheated on me, and I was devastated. I was so depressed, and I was depressed. I was exhausted. I didn't want to leave my room. I was just really down in the dumps, and especially when you're a teenager, and you're really, really obsessed with your own experience when you're a teenager, and no one can understand it, and no one's going through the same things as you, and especially your parents. Your parents have definitely never been there before. Never, they have no idea what you're going through. Your teenage experience is so unique. which it's not. Um, and so I was just so depressed dealing with this. And my mom, who's Jetsama Akunlamo, who's the founder and spiritual director of our temple, so she said to me that I should volunteer. And Hurricane Katrina had recently hit, and our temple was running a dog rescue, rescuing dogs from Hurricane Katrina and bringing them to this remote land in outside of Payson, Arizona. And we had recently rescued like 160 dogs and cats from Hurricane Katrina and flown them across country to this land in Arizona, where they were being taken care of. And I had helped with that aspect, with transporting the animals from the plane to this land. I'd spent a couple days out there doing that. But then at this point, I had gone back home and was just dealing with my heartbreak. And so my mom said, you know, what you should do, you should volunteer. You're so depressed, like you should take some time off. You should go and you need to go help those dogs. So, so I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I went out to this land, and I spent about a week there helping with the dogs, just fixing cages and feeding the dogs and taking them on walks and doing whatever needed to be done. And instead of being consumed with thoughts about myself and my own situation and my own suffering, and isn't this unfair that this happened, and well, I don't deserve this, and like, man, what a crappy thing this guy did, or I don't like him anymore, you know, whatever thoughts those are that I was just like circling in my head. Instead of those thoughts, for this week while I was working with these dogs, I was consumed by the dog's needs. I was consumed by there's a dog that needs to get fed. There's a dog that needs to get walked. There's a cage that just that needs to get fixed. A dog escaped from a cage. We need to catch him. There's another dog that needs to get fed. Now a dog needs a walk. Now a dog needs a cage fixed. It was like this whole, instead of a cycle of self-concern, this endless loop of self-concern, I was entering into this endless loop of compassionate action and of caring for others. And even though I was spending so many hours a day working very hard, you know, out in the hot sun and really pushing myself, I had way more energy and I was happy. And by the end of the week, I realized that like all of this time had gone by and I hadn't thought about my own situation once. That thought had finally, I'd forgotten. You know, you think you have to remind yourself all the time of the sufferings you're experiencing, that you're experiencing it, as if like, why do you need to remind yourself? Why do you need to constantly be having a monologue about the suffering you're experiencing? Isn't the suffering you're experiencing enough without monologuing it to yourself constantly and having judgments and talking to yourself about it? So the fact that I was having this experience of just replacing self-concern for caring for others, and the way that opened up space in my mind and relieved me of the burden of my own obsession with my own suffering, it was incredible. It's the most amazing medicine. Just how that it just relieves you of so much of a burden, and you feel lighter, and you discover that you have like this endless source of energy within you, which is the light of compassion. When you tap into the light of compassion, yes, you still need to take breaks to eat and sleep, and you should absolutely take care of yourself. This isn't about becoming some manic person who has no boundaries. But when you discover the power of connecting with the light of compassion within yourself, it's life altering. And it's amazing what a power source that is, what an energy source that is. And how much stronger that energy of that is than what we normally stoke our fires with, which is just self-concern. So I wanted to explore that today, and explore how, when we feel exhausted, we feel depleted, we feel like we don't have enough time or energy to help others. And it's not that we're lacking time or energy. What we are lacking is compassion. We are just lacking compassion. And it may seem counterintuitive, But the light of compassion, when we awaken that light of compassion, it will melt that fatigue away. So today we're going to explore 3 kinds of meditation that will help us to avoid this feeling of fatigue, that will help us to avoid this feeling of burnout, and instead help us to remain present and grounded and inspired. What is meditation? Meditation is, sorry. First of all, there's many types of meditation. As far as I can tell, most or all religions have some form of meditation. I've heard of meditations in the Jewish tradition, in the Christian tradition, in Hindu tradition. There's all sorts of meditations out there. And even within the Buddhist tradition, there are many, many, many forms of meditation. And every type of meditation has a different purpose, and so it will have a different result. And so it's important to know the reason for a particular meditation, because they're all tools. And you don't want to. Why use a hammer when when you really need a screwdriver? You want to make sure that you are using the correct tools for your needs. So not all types of meditation are the same. So in this tradition, in the Buddhist tradition, we would consider the state of meditation to be the natural state of mind when it is relaxed, stable, and open. And when our mind is calm and settled, there is a spaciousness that allows time between action and reaction. The trouble is that our minds are rarely ever calm and settled. Our minds are always running wild like monkeys, and when the mind's too agitated and wound up and out of control, that monkey mind controls you instead of the other way around. So the point of this first meditation that we are going to do, which is the stabilizing the mind meditation, the point of this meditation is to create space in your mind. The mind is like a muscle. And so in the same way that you work out to keep your body strong, the mind needs to be trained to be calm and relaxed, yet also alert and wakeful. And creating space in the mind helps us to balance our emotions. So normally our minds are just so busy and distracted all the time. And when something happens to us, we respond with an emotional reaction without even realizing it. It happens so quickly. And it's like when you stub your toe and you immediately go, ow, as soon as you stub your toe. You don't stub your toe and go, what do I want to do in this moment? You don't do that. You just stub your toe and you go, ow, and maybe you cuss. If it was me, I would be cussing. And so that's how we act throughout our lives. Someone says something and we respond immediately with afflictive emotions, usually with hatred or anger or greed. We go shopping, we see things, oh, I want that, oh, I want that, oh, I want that. We're constantly reacting to whatever we perceive, and without much control over it. So our minds hop from hope to fear to hope to fear, and from past to the future to, what did someone say to me last week? What's this conversation that I had last week that I want to replay in my head over and over again? Oh, what should we have for dinner tonight? Did we go grocery shopping? Are we out of dish soap? Oh, here's that conversation in my head again. Oh, I got to send an email. Oh, let me do this. Oh, I bet next week this is going to happen. Like all over the place. And very rarely are our minds actually present here in the present moment. And so if we want to generate the awakened mind of wisdom and compassion, we have to first calm our minds. If we don't calm some of this reactivity, you might have a thought of compassion, and then you're on to the next thing, onto whatever thing you're going to buy or email you're going to send or whatever meal you're going to cook or whatever thing someone said to you that you want to obsess over. you forget that compassionate thought very quickly. You just get distracted from it and go on to the next thing. So we have to have some stability if we are going to be compassionate in a stable way. If we are going to actually be able to depend on ourselves to be compassionate, we have to create a foundation for that compassion to arise in a stable way. Like how you wouldn't put a flame out in a windstorm and expect it to stay lit. You would need to kind of create a space for it where that flame is protected by the wind, right? Or like if there's just not a lot of wind, that flame can burn and burn and burn. But if there's a strong windstorm, it goes out. So our compassion quickly disappears in the strong winds of our distraction. So we need to calm that windstorm some, calm down our minds so that we can actually have a stable environment for compassion to grow. So we're going to start with this stabilizing the mind meditation. So let's sit comfortably. You can sit in a cross-legged position, or you can sit in a chair. You might need a cushion under your bum to keep your back straight. And it's important to sit still during this meditation. This is not a meditation that you want to do lying down. When we lie down, that tells our brains that we're wanting to go to sleep. And we're not trying to go to sleep in this meditation. We're actually trying to be in a state where our minds are both awake and restful. And so in order for our minds to be in that state, it helps to have our body in a state that is both awake and restful. So you want to be in a very comfortable position. If your clothing's too tight, you can adjust it. If you're in an uncomfortable chair, find a better one. Put a cushion under your butt, whatever you need to do to be comfortable. It's important to have a straight back. That helps us to stay energized and awake. So have a straight back and make sure that your neck is straight too. Like you can imagine a little string going up the top of your neck, like your little marionette doll is going to be very straight. You can place your hands in your lap, just gently relaxed. The traditional way to hold your hands is to put your right hand over your left hand with your thumbs touching, and to hold your hands about the height of your belly button, just right below your belly button. And so you can have your hands like that if you'd like, which helps to keep your shoulders open and your rib cage open, and just kind of keep this area open. If you have your hands on your lap, just make sure that you're not collapsing in on yourself. You want to make sure that your shoulders are open, rib cage is open. This is all open. In our tradition, we meditate with our eyes slightly open. Everything is open in this meditation. We're really trying to be present with the present moment. And so instead of we're not trying to close our eyes and block our ears and block our thoughts, we're actually trying to be present in the present moment. So our eyes are open, our ears are open, our body posture is open and alert. So with your eyes, you can gaze gently downward, following the line of your nose, and find a place just somewhere in front of you to rest your eyes. If, as you meditate, if you get sleepy, you can raise your gaze a little bit and open your eyes just slightly more, and that will help you to stay awake. And if your mind is too agitated and too wound up, you might move your gaze down a little further, so your eyes are just a little bit more closed. Keep them open, but just a little bit more closed. So you can use your gaze in that way in order to moderate your level of awakeness and activity. And then just place the tip of the tongue right behind your front teeth, like that, very gently. So our mouth is going to be just slightly open too. You can breathe either through your nose or through your mouth. It is more relaxing to breathe through your mouth. But if you're not used to breathing out through your mouth, it's okay to breathe out through your nose. But it is a little bit more relaxing and grounding to be breathing out through your mouth. So allow yourself to relax completely and breathe normally. We're going to put a very light attention on our breathing. Don't try to control it at all. Just breathe naturally and put the most gossamer thin attention on your breath. It's like taking your pulse. You don't put any pressure on it, just observe it. Your attention is like a feather, gently riding on the surface of your breath. Then your mind will try and distract you during this meditation, and that's okay. That's what the mind does. No need to judge yourself if you have a mind that thinks thoughts. All of our minds think thoughts. That's what minds do. They think thoughts. So the way to handle this is to disengage. You don't try to suppress your thoughts. Don't try to block them out, or don't try to change them in any way. There's no need to make them be blissful thoughts or anything like that. Your meditation is not lost by hearing your thoughts, but by following them down the road. So when you find yourself following a thought, just drop it. As soon as you notice that you're following a thought, drop it. Don't look at it first to see if it's a good thought or a bad thought. It doesn't matter. Just drop the thought and return to your breath. If it's really difficult for you to dismiss your thoughts, you can imagine tongs, like spaghetti tongs, picking up the thought and dropping it. Or you could visualize cutting them with scissors and throwing them away. But no matter how you do it, when you notice that you are following a thought, just drop it and come back to your breath. We return again and again to our breath. So we're going to meditate for 5 minutes. Just breathe normally and keep the most gossamer attention on the movement of your breath. right. So that is called stabilizing the mind meditation. You can do that same meditation with a flower or a candle or a picture instead of your breath. If you want to try that meditation sometime by lighting a candle and just keeping your attention on the flame, it's one of my favorite ways to practice this meditation. Or you can find a beautiful flower and just rest your attention on that flower and continue to bring your attention back to that. You can really use just about any object of focus for this meditation. Just a single pointed object that you bring our attention back to. The breath is a very useful object to practice with, though, because we always have our breath. So no matter where we are, we can always just take a moment to meditate on our breath. Even if we're just sitting in the waiting room somewhere, we can just take a moment to focus on our breath. I used to sometimes go early to my college math classes and meditate for a few minutes before I go in and take my tests. And that was always very helpful. So it's very easy to just, anywhere you are, to just take a couple minutes and meditate on your breath. And it can really change the course of your day and the way that you interact with others by just injecting a little bit of space between your perceptions and your reactions. I think it's actually similar to when you're driving a car and you're supposed to maintain a certain amount of distance between the car in front of you. I think it's like 2 seconds or something. You're on the highway. A few seconds are supposed to pass by. You can see the car in front of you passes a sign, and then you count like 1, 2, 3, and then you pass the sign, right? And if you don't have enough space between you and the car in front of you, then if they put on their brakes, you don't have enough time to stop. You just slam right into the back of their car. So we kind of go through our whole lives with no space between us and the car in front of us. And so this is a way of actually providing that space so that we can, when we see something happen, we can actually choose how we want to respond. And we can be in control of our own minds and our own actions instead of just letting our emotions run the show. So now that we have spacious, stable minds, now we're going to develop our hearts. Tsongkhapa said that the field of observation of a compassionate mind is all sentient beings who have any of the 3 types of suffering: pain, the suffering of pain, the suffering of change, and the suffering of being so composed as to be always ready to undergo pain. So these are the 3 sufferings that afflict us and afflict all living beings. All sentient beings suffer from these 3 types of suffering. The suffering of pain is actual physical or mental discomfort, including birth, aging, sickness, and death. So no one lives forever. Everyone dies. This world has been around for however many billion years this world's been around, and no one has lived forever. No one lives beyond 100 or so years at most, right? None of our pets have lived forever. Entire species have gone extinct. We know that all beings, whoever is born, must die. We know that. During that time that you're alive, you're going to suffer the experience of birth, which is a very frightening experience for both mother and child, and especially for the child, just being ripped from this womb, their nice comfy womb, pulled out of that into this scary world that we're in, To breathe air for the first time, that must be terrifying. And then after that point, we just age and continue to march towards death. And in the meantime, we suffer all sorts of illnesses, and broken bones, sprained ankles, whatever, all sorts of physical discomfort. The sufferings of change are feelings of pleasure, which on a superficial level, pleasure can, or an experience might seem pleasurable, but then change into suffering. So for example, if a person is out of the sun, if a person is standing out in the sun where it's too hot, then he will be happy to move to a cooler spot. But if he stays in the cool spot for too long, he will get cold and sick. So similarly, when someone becomes too cold and then goes to a hot place, at first they're happy to be warmed up, but if they stay in that place that is too hot, they'll fall sick. So although there is seeming pleasure in becoming cooler or warmer, if one stays in that state too long, it turns into suffering. So this shows that these situations do not have an inherent nature of pleasure. So you can even think of that with anything that we consider pleasurable. Things are really only pleasurable in moderation. They are never inherently pleasurable. Is it even like eating chocolate? I like chocolate. I do not want to eat chocolate in every moment. There is a point at which there is too much chocolate. And if you eat too much chocolate, it definitely becomes suffering. Same thing with coffee. I love coffee. You have too many cups of coffee, that very quickly becomes suffering. There's all sorts of experiences that we have that we consider pleasurable, but they're not going to be pleasurable permanently. So the suffering of change is the fact that these pleasurable experiences can change into suffering. So then the third type of suffering is called that of pervasive composition. Pervasive composition. Tsongkhapa says, whenever a sentient being takes birth by the power of contaminated actions and afflictions in the desire, form, or formless realms, there are periods when he does not have manifest suffering. However, if certain conditions aggregate, suffering will be generated because the basic causes of misery pervade all types of life within three realms. For instance, though one might have no manifest suffering now, if one is pricked with a needle, cut with a knife, or kicked, pain is immediately produced. So I'm fairly comfortable in my body at this moment, but if someone comes in here and stabs me with a knife, I would then be experiencing suffering. But the reason I can have this sounds like stupid, right? Like it's so obvious. Of course, if someone stabbed me with a knife, I would be suffering. But the fact that I would have suffering in that moment means I am currently composed of the potential for suffering. I have within me the potential for that suffering by the fact that I'm made of flesh and blood. I am made of substances which can be hurt in this way. So the reason for this, the reason that we and all beings experience these sufferings, the suffering of pain and of change and of pervasive composition, is because we have engaged in negative actions in the past, such as lying, stealing, and killing. And these negative actions have created the causes for suffering in our present existence and in our future existence. And with every moment, we are creating new causes. And so if we continue to invest in negativity, if we continue to invest in creating negative causes, we are continually going to bear interest on that investment. And that interest will take the form of suffering. We will suffer ourselves. We will be born in situations in which we are bound to suffer. We will be born in bodies that are prone to suffering. We will be born in environments in which suffering is unavoidable. We will continually find ourselves in a state of suffering. because we have created, we have sown so many seeds of suffering in the past by causing harm to others. So Tsongkhapa says that, so first we should contemplate this for ourselves. We should contemplate, it's really good to contemplate for yourself what the causes are for your present condition. What are the causes that you've engaged in the past that have created your state of suffering currently? And we should analyze that. We should look at the 10 negative actions of body, speech, and mind, including lying and harsh speech and stealing and killing and wrong views and gossiping. And, we should consider these things and look to see whether we are engaging in them, where our habits are, where our negative habits are, and, look to see how our own actions are turning into experiences of suffering. We should be very familiar with that so that we really know with any action that we're doing, what are we investing in? Are we investing in future suffering, or are we investing in future happiness? Because without taking control of the reins here and starting to ask these important questions, and without starting to think about these things and saying, what do I want to invest in? How do I want to act? What are the results I want to have? We'll just continue to operate by our ingrained habits, which is to basically just mindlessly continuing to create suffering. So we should be very clear about the way in which we mindlessly create our own suffering. That will help us understand the suffering of others, because all other beings are exactly like us in that they are not aware of the suffering they are creating with their own actions. They don't know how to take control of their minds. They don't know how to take control of their actions. Their emotions are running the show. Their reactions are running the show. And they might not even know that there is an alternative, that there is an alternative way of being where you control your monkey mind instead of the other way around. So without methods to tame their monkey mind, beings are helplessly lost in cyclic existence where they suffer again and again and again, and don't know how to do anything other than perpetuate their own suffering. So when we can really look and see at how we do that ourselves, that will help us to have compassion for others. So Tsongkhapa says, having formed a clear sense of one's own situation, one should then consider a friend. This person has the 3 types of suffering and is also engaging in the causes of further misery. Even when he finishes undergoing the suffering of this lifetime, he will have more in the next. How nice if he were free of suffering and its causes. May he become so. I will cause him to become so. The practice of Tonglen is what we're going to do next. And the practice of Tonglen, or giving and receiving, is done to develop our compassion and our ability to be present for our own suffering and the suffering of others. It trains us to use the energy of loving kindness to open our hearts to suffering and transform it into well-being. And it asks us to invite suffering into our being and let it break open the armor of our heart. Now, the thing is that when I say that we are going to invite suffering into our being, we are not literally going to cause ourselves more suffering by doing this. And we are not literally going to relieve the suffering of anyone else in this present moment by taking on their suffering. This is a mental exercise that helps us to expand our compassion. So by doing this practice, we will gradually cease to cherish ourselves over others and develop a stronger wish to benefit other beings, eventually leading to the ability to help beings with equanimity. Then we will be able to give them happiness and relieve them of suffering. But meditating does not change the world, but meditating changes us, and then we can change the world. So that's what we're trying to do. Is first we're trying to just work with the field of our own minds and plant seeds of compassion there, and really take care of that field of compassion. So Jetsama said, I find that when I meditate in a mystical way and experience, accept, and awaken to the inseparability and non-duality of all that lives, the sameness, the equality of all that lives, I'm always inspired because there's nothing else but to offer all that I have, my feet, my legs, my torso, my arms, my neck, my head, everything, for the liberation and salvation of all sentient beings. This is how to be moved by your practice. Be deep in your practice. So with this meditation, we're going to be meditating some on that quality so that we can have more inspiration, more compassionate inspiration. So we're going to take our meditation posture, sit up straight, and begin with the same gentle, natural breath. Feel the rhythm of your breath. Now imagine someone who you really love. Traditionally, this would be your mother, but not everyone, that's not always the best place to start for everyone. It could be your father. It could be your aunt or uncle. It could be your brother or sister, your best friend, your child, your dog or cat. Any being for whom you easily feel compassion and whose suffering particularly touches you. So, whoever this person is, contemplate their misery and put yourself in their place, imagining what their experience must be like. So let's take a moment to do that and arouse compassion. Who is this person that you find it so easy to love? Think of this person and what's their experience like? What makes them miserable? As you breathe out, imagine that with your exhalation, you send them all of your positive and loving qualities and all conceivable sources of enduring happiness as radiant, pure light, bringing them limitless joy. And as you breathe in, imagine that you take in all of the causes and conditions of their suffering in the form of murky, dark light. Imagine that they become completely free of misery. You might think as you breathe out, may you be happy. And as you breathe in, may you be free of suffering. May you be happy. May you be free of suffering. So we're going to meditate like this for a few minutes. Now we're going to continue doing this meditation, but we're going to enlarge our focus to include all beings who are in the same situation as this person that you love. Who is experiencing the same suffering as this person? If the person that you just visualized is grieving a loss, then maybe you expand this focus to everyone who is experiencing the pain of loss. If this person feels like a failure, you can do this practice for everyone who feels like a failure. The person who you're thinking of experiences depression, or has cancer, or just lost their home. Do this practice for everyone who is dealing with depression or cancer, or who just lost their home. However it is that, whatever situation that is bringing them misery, expand, focus of your compassion to all beings who are suffering in the same way. And if that's too broad of a focus, perhaps just to a larger group of beings who are experiencing that same type of suffering. Perhaps everyone you know who is suffering depression, or perhaps the person you're thinking of lost their home. Perhaps it's everyone who recently lost their home from Hurricane Laura, a specific group like that. And expand your focus a little bit. Who else is experiencing the same type of misery as the person you love? As you breathe out, send happiness as light. May you be happy. And as you breathe in, take in their suffering as dark, murky light. May you be free of suffering. May you be happy. May you be free of suffering. We'll go for a few more minutes. It's important with this meditation to begin with someone that's easy to generate compassion for. If you start doing this with someone that you hate, before you have developed strong equanimity and compassion, you may find yourself just playing through all of your resentments instead of practicing love. So you have to work your way up gradually. Eventually, you do Tonglen for all beings without any discrimination between friends and enemies. So you can start with someone that you love and then work your way up to someone who you feel neutral about, and then move on to someone who you consider an enemy or someone who has wronged you or hurt you. And so as you do that, as you grow in your ability to do this practice, you can extend this meditation slowly to eventually include all sentient beings throughout space until there is no difference between the wish for happiness between the wish for happiness that one has for the friend, the neutral person, and the enemy. You could have your enemy and your very own dear mother in front of you, and you would love them the same. And that doesn't mean that you would love your mother any less, but that you would love your enemy as much as this person who you love so strongly. Jetsama says, if we care about any sentient beings, we must care about all, as we are all the same nature. So the obsession with harming others is a strong indication that this is not well understood. From the view of, say, Lord Buddha's extraordinary awakened state, there is no place where one life ends and another life begins. There is only the empty and complete display of the primordial ground of being. Beyond that, we are not separate, not in being, not in distance, and not in time, as these are all relative, where the absolute nature is unchanging and fulfilled at once. Relative view can be a real mess, and discord results when one has no healthy boundaries or indulges the ignorant, ordinary monkey mind to do as it pleases. We are not here for that. We are all in ultimate view, Buddha in physical form. How well the light shines through one's window depends entirely on how well we clean and keep the glass. And this is our true job. So we've got to let our Buddha light shine, because that's who we truly are. That is our true nature. And so if we just clean our glass a bit of all of our negative habits, all of the negative habits that keep us living in the dark, in our cocoon of self-concern, and keep us stuck in this dark place full of the weight of the burden of our own experience, if we clean those negative habits away, then the light of our own Buddha nature will shine forth, and we can really benefit other beings. So we'll just do one more meditation. This is a guided meditation that was written by Jetsama Akhen Lamo. This meditation helps one get past the feeling of separation and begin to imitate the radiant qualities of one's true nature, light and compassion. Jetsama said, separation is the cause of all trauma, all pain, any grief that you have ever suffered anywhere or at any time. Anything that has ever hurt you or been a bother to you has been because you believe yourself to be separate from everything. Your true nature is absolute union or oneness. The true nature that you are is light. Effective prayer is about imitating that radiance. Through imitation of your true nature, you come to realize your true nature. You stop thinking about separation, and you stop buying into judgment, and you get out of limitations. Effective prayer is centering into that absolute reality that is the core of what you are. So this next meditation is a guided meditation, so I'm just going to read this aloud to you and just follow along. Get into your meditation posture with your straight back, eyes relaxed, and breathe naturally. Let us become still. Take a deep breath. and let it out slowly. Again. Let us center deep within. Center deep within. Deep within to the presence of the Absolute. And there is radiance. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to embrace the physical body. And all of the physical body is filled with the presence of the Absolute. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to fill our beings on all dimensions. And all that we are is filled with the radiance of the Absolute. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to fill everyone in your home, whatever place that you are in. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to fill everyone there. And everyone here on all dimensions is filled with the presence of the Absolute. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to embrace this building. And all of this building is filled with the light of the Absolute. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to embrace this nation. And the government of this nation is filled with the radiance of the Absolute. And the people of this nation are one life. Presence of the Absolute increases and expands to embrace planet Earth. all nations and all governments are filled with the presence of the Absolute, and there is peace. And the 7.4 billion are one life, radiant. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to fill this galaxy. All planets, all stars, and all life forms are within the embrace of the Absolute. The presence of the Absolute increases and expands to embrace the universe. All dimensions and all kingdoms are filled with the presence of the Absolute. And in all the universe, there is only one life. Now, as we return our consciousness back to physical form, we continue to embrace all that is and to know union, that we are one. And now, as always, we're going to end with a dedication. Every time we sit down and meditate, we always start by setting our intention, setting a compassionate intention, and then we practice, and at the end we come back to our compassionate intention, and we dedicate the efforts of our practice for the benefit of all beings. So we're going to say the dedication prayer that is on the last page of the opening prayer packet. By this effort, may all sentient beings be free of suffering. May their minds be filled with the nectar of virtue. In this way, may all causes resulting in suffering be extinguished, and only the light of compassion shine throughout all realms.